Welcome to Crossroads. Folks, two very different agendas are now at odds over the return of American manufacturing. On one side, there was a trend of what was called deindustrialization. And the concept refers to the destruction of a nation's manufacturing industry and trying to shift it to other forms of employment, mainly like the services industry. Now, the trend in the United States over the last few decades actually saw this. We deindustrialized. And a lot of those industries, they didn't go away. They just went to other countries like China and even to countries like Canada and Mexico because of programs like NAFTA. America deindustrialized and many other countries industrialized at our expense. But now a new agenda is being declared, which is reindustrialization. Reindustrialization, not deindustrialization. And the return of American industry could actually change the entire global economic order. Now, look, to be clear, the concept of deindustrialization was not officially being pushed by any major party. There were some communist groups looking to do it based on Marxism and the destruction of, basically industry. But it was a term also that was used by researchers and economists to describe what was happening to the West. Now, look, until recently, this was not really even a partisan issue. A lot of this was driven by big business and, frankly, bad trade deals over decades. But the impact, especially on the United States, was also notable in many parts of Europe. And look, of course, if that can even be done, it's going to be a painful transition. If things can return to the United States, it is not going to be an easy process. And this is being discussed as well. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he addressed this in a recent interview on Fox Business where he noted there will be short-term pains. There's going to be a lot of problems in the short term, but the goal is something bigger. You need to get through it, and that is to bring back the factories. And they're saying this is going to cause some issues with Wall Street as well. Watch this.
As a recovering Wall Street person, I can tell you Wall Street people like instant gratification. President Trump's agenda is an agenda for the next 1, 2, 3 decades in the U.S. of bringing back manufacturing. And we have a very, what I call a barbell economy. On one side, we're the envy in the world of financial services, tech. On the other side, we're a great natural resource economy driven by energy. We're going to keep the energy dominance going. And what President Trump is doing is looking to bring back the precision manufacturing jobs that have left over the past decades. And I think we will close the uncertainty aperture more and more every day, every week on these tariffs. But we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix this overnight. But I do think uncertainty will go away.
Now, what's interesting in that statement is that Secretary Bessent, he's talking about really both sides of industrialization, right? The whole idea of deindustrialization, it's not that we get rid of jobs or national wealth. The idea was to take an industrialized country, move those factories somewhere else, and have that country shift to what they call a service economy. Things like financial services, the tech industry, energy, and so on. And what he's discussing here is basically that America would keep all of that effectively and bring back the factories, keep both a service economy and the entire factory system. Now, from one standpoint, that can be kind of hard to do, but the other standpoint is America is a very big country. Most countries would not have the capacity for this. They wouldn't have the population, the resources, or the capabilities. The United States would be one of the few exceptions in the world where you could actually do that all here. Now, that may not be as beneficial for our trading partners, though, unless they want to build here as well. And that actually does seem to be on the agenda. Another big part of this concept is whether they can actually sell it to the American people, right? Because it is likely the cost of many goods is going to go up, at least in the short term. You're probably going to pay a lot more for goods for the next few months. A lot of economists are saying we'll probably feel the weight of that very soon. And to some extent, this is a race against the clock. Midterms are coming up, and people's financial well-being will probably decide how they vote. If they're going to do this, they need to have it resonate with voters, and so they need to do it quickly. And there are also programs going into place to try to do that at least. There are a few sides to this, and all of it has to do with the promoting products that are made in America, because that is what needs to be done in order to avoid the tariffs. Those are the ones that won't get hit with the tariffs, right? You build here, boom, done. And since those will start costing a lot less money, by a long shot, by the way, well, there might be more interest in actually buying them, right? Low cost used to be the real tough part on that front, and it forced companies here to kind of compete on a playing field where the odds were stacked against them. Of course, the US dollar being worth more, currency in other countries being worth less, you can get by on less money. American companies manufacturing here, taxes, regulations, red tape. You could not compete on pricing. That is effectively what happened here, even aside from everything else. But there's also the other hard reality that, well, we don't actually manufacture everything we need in the United States. Even if we wanted to have everything made in America, not everything is made in America. And so to change that, the administration has announced another plan to actually cover the cost for companies to move their manufacturing back here. This was also discussed by Secretary Besant. This is from a recent White House press conference on April 29th. Watch this.
So what we are going to do, one of the most powerful parts of President Trump's 2017 tax bill was full expensing of equipment. We are going to make that, as President Trump said in his speech to Congress, that will be retroactive to January 20th. The other thing that we are looking to add is full expensing for factories. So bring your factory back. You can fully expense the equipment and the building. We will couple that with deregulation, cheap energy, and regulatory certainty, and that will continue to make the U.S. the greatest destination for domestic and foreign investment.
Basically, what that means is that the process of moving manufacturing to the United States is going to be a lot less painful. If you want to pack up, get everything ready, move it to a whole different country, normally that is a very expensive process. You have to hire everybody again. It's not something most companies would want to do unless there was a significant financial benefit in doing it, and the light at the end of the tunnel needs to justify that whole process. By effectively funding these companies to do that, or letting them not pay any, letting them kind of write it off, this makes it much easier for them. But this also ties into some of the controversies that Trump ran into in his first term in office. You might remember, the argument is not just about industrialization, it's about regulations, all the red tape. It is difficult to do business here, and some companies don't want to do business here because there's so many regulations, so much red tape, and the taxes are pretty dang high. Now, the push for Trump going back to his first term was about deregulation, right, on his side. This is framed as him cutting all that red tape and reducing taxes. He was saying, look, we reduce taxes, we will make more money in the long term, because what does that mean? It means more people will want to do business here. You raise taxes too high, you create too much red tape, they will move to other countries. And so Trump was trying to do that. We did see that it kind of worked when it came to government funding. The argument on the other side is they were basically saying Trump is doing favors for his business partners and so on like that. That was the narrative. Meaning, of course, that Trump was cutting red tape for businesses and things that would benefit him. They framed this as him trying to financially benefit himself. He actually lost a lot of wealth. But, of course, the idea was bringing companies back, encouraging them to stay here. Now, this was framed as businesses basically being able to ignore some of the laws put in place for the environment also, or to, rein them in. And we can actually see those arguments come up again because businesses now having less red tape, it means that some of those environmental regulations and other things, they might just get ignored. Of course, this also ties in with a much older economic debate. This is the concept of state interventionism. And this is one of the big arguments saying that we have not had true capitalism in the United States actually for a very long time. If you look at the criticisms a lot of younger generations have towards capitalism, oftentimes what they are criticizing are the results of what you call state interventionism, actually what's state socialism, right? It is somebody putting their finger on the scale and damaging artificially the balance that the free market would normally have. If the government subsidizes a product, it creates an imbalance. If they overregulate an industry, it creates an imbalance. It interferes with the reality that what works succeeds and what does not work fails. And so by deregulating, which is, of course, the move by Trump, he is removing the elements of state interventionism to a very large extent. Now, so far, we are seeing some results from this. Walmart, one of the big examples. Now, look, not long ago, there were stories around, the company and how they'd be struggling to get by, given that a lot of its goods come from China. And China, well, they just happen to be getting hit harder than anybody by a long shot with the tariffs. But now Walmart is actually doing a 180. They're turning right around and they're expanding a program for Made in America. This is Walmart. They say, building on the legacy Sam Walton established over 40 years ago, Walmart is expanding support for American-made products through new programs like Grow With Us, providing small businesses with new tools and paths for success. They say with Grow With Us and the upcoming 2025 open call, where they look for new vendors, Walmart, they're saying, is making it easier for U.S.-based entrepreneurs to navigate the complexities of retail and bring their products to a national stage. Now, Walmart actually invokes one of its older programs, again, going back more than 40 years, to support American-made products. What a concept, right? The company notes the whole issue with made-in-China products may not be as serious as some have believed it was with them. It actually notes that more than 2/3 of the products at Walmart are made in America, grown in America, or assembled in America, the United States. And look, while assembled in America, it's still different from made in America. It means the parts might still come from China. It's still pretty significant. And the big part of this announcement, though, is really the Grow With Us campaign. That's U.S. as in us, right? Get that? And the company notes that American small businesses, they can join the program through Walmart. In addition to that, they're also announcing an annual open call event that's starting in June. And that program is for small and medium-sized businesses with products that are already ready to go on store shelves. They can basically order, a few pallets of them, put them up for sale, and then you have Made in America right in Walmart. Now, look, again, the important thing here is time. This is really a race against the clocks. The timeline for this, all these, Made in America pushes and companies restocking shelves with Made in America products, this is a few months out at least. So the overall trend right now does seem to be that this could take some time. It might be about a year, really, before the factories get built and hire people and they start actual production and they start working on markets. It could take like a year, maybe even longer, depending on the industry. Some are going to be fast-tracking it. Even a year is pretty dang fast. But it is moving. And similar with other industries, the automotive industry, it's another very big one. The Ford CEO, that's Jim Farley, he recently put on a yellow vest, did some media rounds. He told CNN they're building 2 new manufacturing facilities right here in the United States. Watch this.
We're building a new plant in Ohio and Tennessee. We're number 2 to Tesla on electric. We're number 3 to hybrid to both the Japanese competitors. We're investing across these different kinds of powertrains. We're kind of the only one who offers all of it. You can get electric F-150, a hybrid F-150, a V8 F-150, EcoBoost F-150, and we don't really care. We just want people to have the choice. So we're building 2 brand new factories in the U.S., and we're the most American already. As far as parts are concerned, that's a good question. Now, we have a lot more work to do to, can we even do this, that 15 or 20%? And that's what we have to work through. Look, we're expecting our competitors to do what Ford's already done, which is to localize more production like this plant here in Kentucky.
Now, on the note about auto parts, that's a pretty key thing here. That's a whole other issue. A lot of auto parts are actually made in Mexico. It's one of their big industries, actually. It's one of their main exports, even to the United States. But that also highlights kind of another point with all these trade deals. While there is, without a doubt, a huge push to bring back manufacturing, it's likely we're still going to buy a lot of parts from other countries. We're probably still going to buy some of those things from Mexico. I don't know about Canada. Some things are just not really financially viable to be made in America. Because again, you need to think of the cost of production, which includes, of course, the wages and just whether someone wants to be building the thing. Some other countries, again, the jobs they have, the options they have, they might go for less pay. They might not mind jobs that most Americans would not want to work. We'll probably still buy those parts from other countries. And it's probably going to be the same thing with like small electronic components. If you ever like opened up your computer, something like that, you see those little bits on the motherboard and so on. Those little bits, there's no way you can manufacture them in the US and have it be financially viable. They've tried for years. But this also ties into just how a normal economy works, right? The factories, they will go wherever they can do it with the best quality and the lowest cost. Those are the two key areas here, quality and cost, right? The cost part can be offset a bit with tariffs, but tariffs are not going to offset everything. You can change things. You can maybe put a 30, 40% tariff on. You're probably not going to keep like crazy high tariffs for the long term, but they can work to balance the scales a bit. It won't fix everything. You're not going to make some products work, just plain and simple. But back to the overall shift taking place right now. There are programs to cover the cost to move manufacturing to the United States. There's an incentive for retailers like Walmart and others to sell goods that are, competitive when it comes to pricing. Obviously, if you have your store and everything is double, triple the price, people might not buy. They're incentivized to have products that have lower costs, which now means made in America. And a lot of big industries like Ford, they don't want to pay tariffs either, especially in high-value markets like the automotive industry. But there's also another side to this, and that is investment. Investment is one of the big ones. Now, it used to be the case that a lot of foreign investment went offshore. A lot of that was going to China, American money shipping off to the Chinese Communist Party. Again, that was a huge like grease on the wheels of the CCP's industry. And it's actually been that way for decades, but that is also now changing, and it's pretty significant. The Trump administration says it has now secured about $8 trillion in investment, over the course of several years. And they're taking a victory lap on it. The White House account, they even put out a whole promotional video. Watch this.
We have more monies being spent than at any time in the history of our country. We're up to close to $8 trillion, I think I can say.
At the heart of the Trump administration's policies is one overarching goal. It is to stage the great American manufacturing comeback.
President Trump pushing ahead with his America First agenda.
Breaking news, Apple announced it's... Now, I'm not going to play that full video. It's more than 4 minutes long. And basically, it goes over each of the major deals one by one. This guy donated $1 billion, this one $2 billion, and it just keeps going. But this is actually really significant. A lot of that foreign investment, it's not like it wouldn't be happening, it just would not be coming to the United States normally. Again, a lot of that money used to go to China. That was one of the big destinations for a lot of foreign investment. And now that money's coming here to the United States, not something we've seen in kind of a very long time. And they also held another event with some of the major investors and heads of companies. The full press conference had Trump calling on each of the business representatives, declaring how much they were investing in the United States. But the White House also put out another promo video for that one. Watch this.
Every new investment, every new factory, and every new job created is a sign of strength in American economy.
Mr. President, thank you for what you're doing, not only to revitalize U.S. manufacturing, but helping ensure that the U.S. aerospace industry continues to lead the world in innovation.
U.S. must continue the leadership of AI.
I want to thank you, sir, for everything that you've done.
We are proud to create millions of jobs here and to make significant investments to catalyze a new era of advanced manufacturing.
We finally have a president who understands that we need to reindustrialize, we need to be made in America, made in the USA.
And there it is again, right? Reindustrialization, and that's what this is about. An important point, because what were the previous agendas? Deindustrialize, decolonize, they used to call it, reduce the human population. There was a big movement to kind of slow down the progress, quote unquote, of Western societies. This mainly only applied to like developed countries. And the idea, of course, was, take the businesses here, ship them elsewhere, bring them to Latin America, bring them to Africa, especially bring them to China, build up those countries. Yes, maybe things will slow down in these, first world countries, but it's for the better of the world. And that was the narrative for a very long time, that America was too strong, too wealthy, too powerful, and you needed to tear it down. Now, there were a lot of people looking to do that strategically as well, to weaken the United States, to make life here not as dang good. And effectively what happened is by building up really kind of bad countries like the Chinese Communist Party, that led, of course, to tyrannical regimes and really abusive regimes making out like bandits. A lot of the world's wealth shifted, and it shifted in ways that were not beneficial to, I think, humankind. You saw, of course, slave labor in China. You've seen, of course, the Chinese Communist Party use a lot of that money for really ill intent. They've used it, even weaponizing it against other countries, even using their weight to take over entire industries, GDP products in Australia, in Europe, in many, many, many countries. The wealth that went to the Chinese Communist Party being siphoned out of the United States and most of the free world built one of the most tyrannical regimes the world has ever known. But that is all changing now because, again, the agenda here is reindustrialization. And what does that mean? It means that the things we gave to them, we are now taking back. And that's what this is, right? But remember also, it's not like, global industry disappeared for the last few decades. It's not like the factories went away. They just went to other countries. Many of those countries, they're also now losing those factories. It's not just China, right? They're one of the big ones, but it's not just them. And the entire supply chain, along with the whole network of jobs, for many countries, effectively, that's their economy. Much of that now will come to the United States. Some of those countries, life is not going to be as easy. It means that some of their core GDP products, some of their biggest job-creating facilities, those things are now being lost for them. Now, China is very much being hit harder than anyone on this, but others are going to get hit hard too. But hey, look, on the other side, the situation for the United States will likely become a lot better over the course of time. If you don't believe it, well, look at the effect this has had on other countries, frankly. Life became significantly better in many countries where factories went to. If those factories come back, obviously it will become better here as well. Maybe to the detriment of some other countries, but, what are we, right? Now, in addition to all this, though, you can also now buy American citizenship. That's also being sold. They're selling gold cards. They're $1 million each. And so, if those people in these countries, they've been making a lot of money, they want to follow the jobs, well, they can purchase a gold card. And these are apparently now selling actually pretty dang well. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he was discussing this during a recent cabinet meeting. This was last week. Watch this.
We've got so much, as I travel around, the attention on the Trump gold card. I mean, it makes me very popular. Last night, I was out to dinner, and someone came up and said, can I buy 10? And how do I buy 10? And I'm like, that's pretty good. It's $50 million for dinner. So, I was paying for my dinner. The External Revenue Service, right? You've got the tariffs and the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars coming in to build the External Revenue Service. That our objective, of course, is to replace the Internal Revenue Service and let those outside countries trading with us, let them pay their fair share to America. And then
you get that? Buy your gold card. I've seen different numbers on that. Some say 1 million. Some, Trump noted 5 million previously. We'll see how much American citizenship costs. Maybe it'll cost more in the future. But of course, look, not everybody is happy about, well, any of this, frankly. This is especially given that the Trump administration is pushing for mass deportations. He's pushing out the poor people, and he's selling citizenship to the wealthy. But look, the idea of migration they've been talking about, what the Trump administration is pushing for is merit-based immigration. You need to have skills, you need to have qualifications, you need to have money. We want the successful people, we want the good citizens of other countries. We don't just want, kind of the poorest and the criminals, as Trump keeps calling them, and so on. Merit-based migration. And although that may sound harsh, that's kind of been the policy for most countries. The United States is one of the only countries that has not had merit-based migration. Even until very recently, Canada, their entire migration program was merit-based for a very long time. Only recently did that change. Europe is merit-based. Most countries are merit-based. They only want you going there if you will benefit their country, not leech off of it. America is one of the only countries that does the opposite. Now, that's again, people with high skills, or in this case, again, people with a lot of money who want to buy a gold card. But on the front of the tariffs, though, some goods are probably going to cost a lot more without a doubt. At least until all the American factories become a reality. That might be months, that might be a year. Now, there have been a lot of viral images going around where people are posting what they say are receipts on things they're trying to buy, and they show the added cost of tariffs, a lot of money. You will not believe the money that's being tacked on with this. I'll be talking more about this after I come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Goods in the United States are probably going to start costing a lot more money as the tariff wars hit, at least in the midterm, right? Now, this is going to be maybe a year out until those big, beautiful factories, until they become a reality. There have been a lot of viral images going around. People are posting receipts. These are things they're trying to buy on the internet. And they show the costs of tariffs and shipping. It's incredible, actually. One of the images going around was an alleged receipt from Spear and McKay. It showed a $90 shirt get hit with a $154 tariff. So that $90 turned into $154. Maybe you don't want to buy that shirt, just saying. And of course, part of that is because people are buying from China still. They have the highest tariffs in these parts. There were similar images going around of people trying to buy things on Chinese e-commerce sites like Temu and Shein. These ones are bad. And what's important with these, it's not even necessarily tariffs. The high costs for a lot of those go beyond tariffs. It's shipping charges, the cost of international shipping. One of the biggest things that happened actually is not even, well, the tariffs are a big deal. Aside from that, there's something else. People are suddenly having to pay import fees on otherwise small items. So look, a product that might cost $60, and this is a real example, you're going to have an additional import fee of $80 or more. And so your import fee costs more than most of the products. And why would you want to buy it in that case, right? But again, that's actually different from the tariffs, right? That's a whole other issue. It does tie in with a loophole. What this does is, it was a loophole that Chinese companies were taking advantage of. This used to be something we kind of did for China. And, it wasn't that international shipping didn't cost anything. It was effectively that American taxpayers were subsidizing this. Chinese businesses were taking advantage of what was effectively a subsidy. Now, the program that let them do this, it was the de minimis program. Basically, it made it so you did not have to pay duties or taxes on shipments under $800. And the way that was intended is, look, you're traveling internationally, you're buying something at the store, maybe you're at the airport and so on. You don't have to pay any kind of fees on small items. That's what it was designed for. Small items, individual things, you travel, you have something in your bag, you don't have to pay duties or taxes or whatever else. That was the idea. But Chinese companies started exploiting it. And they exploited it by letting people buy individual items directly from Chinese factories. And that kind of got around one of the big issues, because if you have a factory, they're mass producing, how does that normally work? Well, they load up their products on a pallet, they ship them to the United States, there are stores or distribution facilities here, and then they sell them. That means, of course, they have to pay the duties because it's over $800. So what they did instead is they were technically being sold individually. So instead of bulk, they were getting around shipping costs. They were effectively sending the exact same pallet, but it was divided individually rather than being technically a pallet, and they were selling it like that to get around all those things, which let them undercut most other businesses. They were undercutting everybody on price by taking advantage of what was effectively, again, a United States taxpayer-funded subsidy. We were paying for them to rob us. And now that's gone. We're now witnessing that if you want to import something from another country, it costs a lot of money for shipping. It's not like buying from the next state over. It costs a lot of money for international shipping. However, we're also seeing something else pretty interesting as well, alongside with this whole end of de minimis. Temu is now stopping shipments from China to the United States, and instead they're actually turning to local fulfillment. Epoch Times said this. It said low-cost online retailer Temu is ceasing shipments to the United States from China, the company announced on May 2nd. On Friday, Temu, which is run by a U.S.-based subsidiary of PDD Holdings, said in a media statement released to the Epoch Times that the platform is transitioning to a local fulfillment model. And they say, quote, Temu's pricing for U.S. consumers remains unchanged, the May 2nd statement said. They said all sales in the U.S. are now handled by locally based sellers, with orders fulfilled from within the country. It notes that earlier in April, in light of the pending closure of a trade policy that facilitated the movement of low-cost items from abroad to the United States, Temu said it would likely be hiking prices as soon as April 25th. In the following days, some users said on social media they saw an import cost equivalent to the tariff charged on imported goods from China. And they say as early as April 29th, reports indicated that the site was already promoting only local items that were exempt from any tariff charges. They said, quote, Temu has been actively recruiting U.S. sellers to join the platform, the Temu statement said. And it said the move is designed to help local merchants, American merchants, and more customers grow their businesses. It says this shift is part of Temu's ongoing adjustments to improve service levels. Now, on that point, not everybody is on board, not by a long shot. A lot of people are unhappy about effectively everything taking place right now. De minimis, tariffs, even the idea of bringing industries back here. Many people do not want it. And this issue is actually just about right down the middle politically. Now, most Democrats in Congress, they are against the tariffs. They've been trying to stop Trump from doing it. In a recent vote, one Democrat skipped out on it. They didn't, vote with everybody else. But there are actually even a handful of Republicans who are very much against the tariffs. Among the biggest, the loudest, Republican Senator Rand Paul, he's been among the biggest critics of the tariffs. He's arguing the policies basically go against free market principles. The argument with tariffs is it's basically a tax on goods. Who pays the tariffs? Well, technically the importer. And the concern is, of course, the importer will have to put that price on consumers. That's the concern. Now, Rand Paul helped sponsor a bill that could work to overturn Trump's tariffs, and it would bring more congressional oversight on any future attempts to put tariffs in place. That bill barely did not get passed. It was a 49-49 vote, right down the middle. And so it did not go through. The reason was because, in the United States, if there's a tie like that, the vice president casts the tie-breaking vote. J.D. Vance cast a tie-breaking vote, blocked that whole thing from happening. Now, the tariffs still stand as of now. I would personally assume we'll see probably a lot more challenges. I don't think that's the last one we're going to see. There might even be individual nation challenges Remember, Congress voted to overturn some of the U.S. tariffs specifically on Canada. You might see some of that as well, not trying to change the whole thing, but going after specifics. Now, depending on the impact we see over the next few months also, it could change a lot. If things get worse for Americans, if prices go through the roof, if people can't afford goods, if what they say is going to happen actually comes true and you go to the store and there's empty store shelves, a lot of the mainstream media, they keep repeating that. There's going to be empty store shelves. If that happens, expect a lot more challenges. But on the other side, if things get better, if the quality of life improves, if jobs go up, which they have been actually, if American manufacturing really does come back, you can expect the tariffs, you can expect them that they're basically here to stay. You could expect if it's good for Americans, we will want to keep it in place, Americans will vote for that, and that will be it. The tariffs are not the kind of end-all, be-all. They are meant to be a catalyst to bring back manufacturing, to bring back jobs. And that's not even just the factories. That's shipping, that's logistics, that's natural resources, that's the individual parts that are used to make the finished products. It's the storefronts, it's the online retailers, it's everything. And so the return of industry is really the return of effectively an entire economy. And if manufacturing does come back to America, the whole movement for reindustrialization, it could be here to stay. All right, folks, that said, let's jump into some questions. So if you have a question, leave it in the comments. Please like this video. Let's jump into it. Let's see, first off here from Michelle Kim. You're saying we did not get here overnight. We are not going to get out overnight. Point is, whatever it takes, we have to get out of under control of CCP. Well, you know, that's the big issue here. You know, I was reflecting on this a bit because it's true. You know, we paid not that much. A lot of people are pointing to there are some products where even with everything in place, we're probably not going to make them as cheap as you can get from like China. The elephant in the room, the thing a lot of people are not talking about is why prices are so cheap in China. One of the big ones is because they have slave labor. They have slaves. You know, a lot of the garment industry is slavery in China. They are literal, like, I mean, not even free-range slaves. These are like in prison camps slaves. A lot of them are persecuted minorities, Muslim Uyghurs, for example, being one of the big ones in the garment industry. A lot of Chinese cotton it's a slave industry. It's the imprisoned Muslim Uyghurs. They have re-education through labor camps that could be like religious believers, the Falun Dafa practitioners. Huge number of them are the slaves that they use to make a lot of like Halloween decorations and Christmas ornaments, and just crazy when you think about it. And a lot of like cheap goods you find, it's made by slaves. And so it is true, hey, great, you know, we pay less for things, but, you know, for a country that makes such a big deal about like the history of slavery and the evils of colonization, it seems kind of hypocritical that we make such a big deal about it, criticizing ourselves, but many of the people who do that are the ones who like don't want to get rid of slavery. Like, how does that make sense? Am I missing something here? How does that make sense? Maybe it's one of those things where it's just so far away. It just doesn't feel real to people. You're disconnected enough. It doesn't feel real. But this has really been allowed to happen. And the other ironic part is a lot of the big businesses that were trying to preach to us about, you know, again, America's history of slavery and how we're criticizing America and all these things, you know, again, a trend we've seen for the last, decade plus. Many of those exact same companies buy slave products in China. Many of those exact same companies, I'd say knowingly do this. They know they're using slavery. And, you know, even aside from the whole slave argument, you also have just crazy working conditions. In China, the work condition, and again, you see two different sides to it. If you go on TikTok or even YouTube these days and you see like the Chinese propaganda, you're seeing all these neon lights and drone swarms, and people have this kind of like moth to a flame kind of fascination with pretty colors like that. But that's not representative of the lifestyle most people are living. The worker culture in China, the like average Chinese person, they're peasants. I mean, life is terrible for them. The work schedule is what they call 996, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And even if on paper they say they changed it, they have not. There's a lot of things that are written in Chinese law and it's not followed. It's just the way the CCP works. The Chinese Constitution has protections on like freedom of belief to an extent. They don't enforce it. It's the opposite. And so just because they have things on paper does not mean it's what is actually being done. Again, this is a Chinese Communist Party. It is a totalitarian communist system, and we've been feeding it for decades. We've been feeding this thing for decades. It's really grown out of control. It openly says it wants to destroy us, and we're still feeding it. There are people who don't want to get rid of that. Now, the other side, though, look, we're reindustrializing. China is going to deindustrialize. And, that was actually a process that was starting even prior to this tariff war. Even prior to this. Remember what I was saying maybe a year ago. I was saying the trend right now is de-risking, right? What was de-risking? That was companies pulling their businesses out of China. A lot of that was starting because of COVID-19 and the COVID lockdowns, because China, the CCP, they kept locking down the economy. And they also started putting new laws in place that made it very dangerous for foreigners. If you were a Western business person, you could be imprisoned over just an international dispute and accused of being a spy or something like that. They could kill you. If you tried taking your money out of China, they would prevent a lot of investors from pulling their money out. It was becoming very dangerous to do business in China. And so personal safety, the risk that they're going to close down the economy at any given moment, the increasingly totalitarian policies, the threat that they were going to invade Taiwan, maybe still will. And if a war takes place there, you're not going to be able to do business there. If there's a war, you're not going to be able to do business. And so what were companies doing? They were de-risking. There was a risk. They had to get around that. They were already pulling their businesses out. And so what you have left now, and of course, there were also sanctions. Right before the tariffs, there were a lot of sanctions. For example, because of China's support of Russia. That was a big one. A lot of industries were getting sanctioned. Now, and also on the human rights front, actually, even some of the Muslim Uyghur slave industries, a lot of those got sanctioned as well. Now, a lot of those businesses that, de-risked and left China, many of them did not come to the United States. They went to Vietnam, they went to India, they went to other countries. Now, this is the other side of what we see happening with the United States right now. There are some industries that will not come back to the United States. And what it comes down to is this. Certain industries, okay, let's put it this way. Americans need to want to work those jobs. And there are some jobs Americans don't want to do. There was a video going around, oh my gosh, it was terrible. There was a video going around of a Chinese vape factory. Like people have those vapes they smoke. I think they look goofy. When I see this, it looks like someone's sucking on like a phone or something. Like it looks like someone's sucking on their phone. I can't get over it. Some people like them. I understand. I think they look goofy. Like at least like cigarettes have the old cowboy image. Come on. But anyways, aside from that, my personal opinion on vapes, I think they're goofy looking. But there was videos going around of one of the Chinese factories. They have to test all of them. And so you have people getting a stack of like 9 vapes, and they go like this, and they take 9 drags of these vapes. And I mean, imagine your job is to chain smoke for 12 hours a day. Imagine that. Would you want to do that job? I would not. Absolutely would not. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. I would not wish that job on like any. I would not want like an MS-13 gang member imprisoned in El Salvador doing that job. You know what I mean? And so I don't think we're going to do that here. And unless you can find a guy and he's like, finally, someone's going to pay me to do what I love doing, you know, just vaping for 12 hours straight. It's probably not going to be a long-term job. Let's just put it that way. So, but there are people who do that. Some of those businesses will not come back here. There are some jobs that are just real menial, hard labor jobs. And I mean, unless you have people coming here and they want to migrate here and do the jobs here, because remember, green cards migration, there probably will be a lot of legal migration if they rebuild factories and stuff here, especially as foreign investment is building even foreign factories here. You will probably see a lot of factory jobs become migrant jobs. That's the other thing. But if people don't want to do it, if working conditions can't meet like OSHA standards, those jobs will go to other countries. And so there are some jobs that will stay in other countries, without a doubt. And again, it just comes to, again, price, competition, and whether people actually want to do them. That's the reality. But you know, the big thing, in my opinion, is this is disempowering the Chinese Communist Party. I've said it over and over again. The strength of the CCP is external power. Internally, they're very weak. It's external power. And a lot of that is because they've been manipulating what they call the material interests of the West. They use money and financial interest as a tool for control. And basically what's happening now is you take away that financial mechanism, they're losing their influence. They're losing their control globally because of that. Another thing you're going to see also, though, you're going to see other up and coming countries. You will watch some other countries become a lot better. India, for example, you know, the next superpower, as they keep saying. India, if they don't go to war with Pakistan, which I do believe the CCP is even trying to instigate right now, because this is why, India can potentially replace China for a lot of manufacturing, especially pharmaceuticals, especially some things they already kind of have the infrastructure for. Things are already in place. India could become one of the big, you know, next economic booms. You could watch this. Same thing with like Indonesia, same thing with maybe even Vietnam to an extent. You can watch some of these other countries start to do really well for themselves because those businesses, they're going there. And, you know, and the other side with this too is, remember, even in terms of international shipping, global logistics, a lot of it was already set up to facilitate trade with China. Keeping it in that region is actually easier for some companies because things are already in place. They don't have to remake the wheel effectively. You know, they just divert it a little bit. They go here instead of here, and it's simple as that. So things are in place to facilitate that. Tharpat, you're saying we need better ways to find products manufactured in the USA. Hard to discern most of the time. And now I'm noticing this materials from USA, but still manufactured in China if you keep reading. Yeah, I've seen that. There's a lot of assembled in China products, and there's a lot of assembled in USA products, meaning the parts come from probably China and elsewhere, or, you know, we provide the parts, they're assembled in China, or, you know, it's designed in the USA or designed in Italy, but it's still made in China. That's the other big thing. I've noticed, I mean, let's put it this way, you know, going on Amazon these days and looking for an electronic has been a nightmare. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. I go on Amazon, I want to buy like, say like a USB light or something like that. I need a light, you know, because I do camera stuff. I need a light. I go on Amazon, I type it in, I get what look like 100 different brands I've never heard of, and they look like the same product. It's like Chinese knockoffs of Chinese knockoffs. You have Chinese companies on top of Chinese companies on top of Chinese companies. One of the big issues you have with Chinese electronics is oftentimes they put malware in them. You plug them in, they infect your computer. I don't want that. And so I struggle to find products that are not made in China. And then, you know, finally I'm like, okay, finally here's one of a company I know. It's like, you know, Samsung or, you know, a Japanese company or, you know, there's not a lot of American ones on there. Finally you find one that's not a dang Chinese company. And it's like the same design because the Chinese ones are all like knockoffs of it. And then you find even that one is made in China. You're like, geez, like, oh, it's a nightmare. And so I think you're going to watch that start to change. Those products, you will probably see a lot less of them. And what's going to happen, you're going to see a lot more, you know, probably better quality, higher trust brands. I would personally be willing to pay a lot more to get a decent brand, personally, because I don't trust the quality of Chinese products. I don't want to support them, even aside from quality and, you know, toxic products, because I mean they use like toxic paint and toxic, you know, toxic chemicals. Like it's horrible when they've done investigations on these things. I'll give you one quick example. There's a group, and every year they do a big study of like made in China toys, like the toys you're buying for your kid, and the amount of like dangerous lead levels in the paint, and not even just lead, like a lot of other chemicals, it's really high a lot of times. And if you understand, like you're letting your kid play with what is a toxic toy, I mean, I can only imagine how this has affected kids these days. I mean, geez, I mean, I feel bad for kids. They get it in the food, they get it in the toys. It's like, give those kids a break. You know what I mean? Like, they're like petri dishes of all these things. It's horrible. But you know, the point is, a lot of products coming out of China are toxic. Aside from poor quality, aside from malware, aside from slavery, aside from like all these other things, and aside that you're just supporting like the CCP, a lot of the products are toxic. And so I would absolutely be willing to pay a lot more money. I'd be willing to buy less. Just give me a decent product that will last and is not going to poison me or infect my computer or support something I don't want to support. That would be fantastic. It would be wonderful. I hope that happens. And I think, you know, if it happens that I go on Amazon and I type something in and it shows me 5 products instead of 500 products, fantastic. Even better. You know what I mean? Even better. I hope that happens. And I do hope too. One thing I'm hoping for is whether it's Walmart or Amazon or who knows what else. And I know there are some, I can't think off the top of my head, I know there actually are some like new patriotic type companies that do like made in America, only curated. They don't tend to have like a ton of products, but I think that will change as well. I think you will start seeing filters for made in America, especially because with tariffs and pricing, it'll be beneficial. I think you will start seeing that. Probably very soon. And you know why? It's because the market demands it. How many people here, if there was a filter for Made in America, how many of you here would click that? Right? Tell me. I know I would. I absolutely would. Because all else aside, even aside from my drumming patriotism, I do trust American manufacturing and quality more than most others, just frankly. Let's see here. KM, you're saying welfare was never meant to be lived off indefinitely. It was designed to help people in a time of need. Yeah, you know, You know, I have mixed feelings with it. I know people on welfare. I do know people on welfare. I do think that there's a certain pride in work. A lot of people I know who are on welfare and have been on for a very long time, they're not necessarily happy. I think it actually, when you don't feel useful, it's not good for you. And I don't think it's good for them. I know they're self-conscious about it. I know they feel bad about it. And what happens over time is that they start feeling like they're not capable of doing things. Because, you know, if you go long enough without working, it's like, it's really hard to get back into it. If you have people who've, you know, not worked for a long time and they go and get a job and suddenly they have a boss telling them what to do, ordering them around. They have an annoying coworker. Everybody knows one or two. And you got to deal with it, because if you don't, you're going to lose your job, right? There's a certain strengthening of the character that takes place by dealing with that stuff. Personally, I do think it is healthy. And even with school, I think this is healthy. You need to be exposed to uncomfortable things. You need to be exposed to the person who is annoying. You need to be exposed to things that force you to do something you don't want to do for a little bit, because that helps you, of course, deal with things like that and not be so moved by things, and you can start taking it a bit more lightly. Over time, you will be less bothered by it. And I believe that part of character development is part of the refinement of character, and I think it's a fantastic thing. You know, I don't think you should avoid uncomfortable things, is what I'm saying. I think it's good for character. But the other side of it is just the pride in work. And you know, and this is something Americans talk about that you don't find a lot of other countries talking about. You know, in Europe, they tend to have more leisurely work cultures. I mean, I like that. I do think a lot of European countries have kept a lot more traditional values. You know, they're going to have their 2-hour break in the afternoon where they go and take a nap, or, I don't know, do whatever else, or go have lunch with their families, you know, nice things like that. I think it's healthy. I think there's a slower culture and a little more down to earth. Americans, we do tend to work a lot harder. But there's also a belief a lot of Americans have in that. And we do talk about it. Americans talk about the pride in work. And how is that different from China? I've thought a lot about this, and here's what I think. Okay. Why does that work in a free country and it does not work in a communist country or a socialist system? Like, a lot of European countries have a lot of socialist work practices, work cultures. Why does it work in America? Why do Americans feel pride in work? You know, I was reading the book Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and when I read that book, it clicked. This is why. Okay, did anybody here read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand? You know, she was kind of like a pretty extreme libertarian. She talked about, like, the value of selfishness. I don't know if I go that far, but I think she touches on an important principle, though, with that, which is different. I would call it something other than selfishness. I would call it pride in work. And here's her argument. Whenever the character is asked, why do you care so much? Right? There's the character who's building the railroad. He works his butt off. Everything he does is building this business. The guy works himself to death. He puts everything he has into it. And people keep asking him, why do you care so much? Why do you care so much? Do you know what his answer is? He says, because it's mine. Because it's mine. And I think that's what it is. When you're living in a free market, your success is determined by the work you put into it. There is a certain pride in seeing what you've built succeed. There's a certain pride in putting your labor into something and watching what you've built, right? This is something that I think only exists in free countries, because it's the opposite in a lot of communist countries. Do you know what one of the sayings was in the Soviet Union? One of the sayings in the Soviet Union is, they pretended to pay us and we pretended to work. There was no pride in labor. No pride in labor. They pretend to pay us, we pretend to work. You still find that in a lot of European countries. There's a really heavy conflict actually between workers and bosses. I mean, look at France, for example. You have your weekly mass protest, for example. They have a lot of conflicts with their bosses. A lot of other countries, they really discourage the work cultures in a lot of countries. I've talked to colleagues from Netherlands. I've talked to colleagues from Sweden. They all say this. It is discouraged to succeed because it's like, oh, you think you're better than us? Oh, you want to, do better than everyone? Like, why do you do that? And so there's a culture that kind of pulls people down. And if you make more money, you don't want people to know. It's like this in a lot of countries, actually. They kind of pull. It's kind of like a barrel of crabs. Their bucket of crabs. One tries climbing up, the whole bucket pulls them right back down. They don't have that kind of pride in work. The opposite, actually. They tend to want more leisure time. Americans are different. We care about what we build. Americans take pride in that. And I'd make another thing with that as well. I would say some jobs, maybe they're not as fulfilling as others, but I know a lot of people, I know a lot of Americans, even if they don't make a lot of money, even if even your garbage guy who probably makes more money than me, those guys make good money. They really take pride in what they do. That is something so unique. But the other side of it too is when you lose that, a lot of people lose their sense of meaning. Case in point, a lot of people chase after the idea of retirement. 10 more years and then finally I'm going to get to retire and not work at all. I'm just going to sit on the beach and get a suntan and fish or something like that. Sounds great. You're going to do that for 2 weeks and you're going to be bored out of your mind. And a lot of people experience that. I was talking to someone about this just recently, actually. I was talking to actually one of my good family friends. Actually owns one of the bigger road construction businesses in Jersey. Fantastic guy. He was saying that, what you find a lot of times is people work for retirement, then they quit the job they love, they retire, they get bored, and then they get a job just to kind of, have a social environment or, feel productive. And the job they get that replaced the job they love is something much less fulfilling, something they like less. And you find that a lot. You'll find a lot of people, they need to feel productive. It is not healthy when you're not. It's not. I don't think it's good for you. Now, I would hope that we can have good jobs and quality jobs and jobs that do let you feel, pride in what you do. But not all of them are like that. That's how it is, right? But I think there's something in us. We need to produce something, though. Just absolute leisure. Absolute leisure loses its meaning very quickly. It loses the idea that you've achieved something. I don't think for some people maybe it's great, but for a lot of people it's not. That is really the case, I think. Now the question, E. Frago, you're saying, China's strangle them with their own regulation. Yeah, another translation, strangle you with your own systems. The CCP does that very heavily against the West. They will try to manipulate the open nature of the American system. Even in their military, even in schools and stuff, they study the laws and regulations of other countries, and they find loopholes and ways to exploit them. It's really a cutthroat nature the CCP has kind of tried instilling. It's horrible. Another question here, Judy Akeem, you're saying, do you think if China loses such great market outside, the CCP is finally going to be pushed toward caring about internal buying power? You're saying, ergo, help their own people or the country will go down. I don't think so. And here's the reason, is because they've already been trying it. Okay, so this is actually something I've been reflecting on a bit. The concept of money is very, very different in the United States and in the West than it is in a lot of other countries, especially in China. In China, a lot of people do not spend their money. You do have some people who flaunt it around. A lot of them do not. A lot of them do not. And there's a couple reasons for it. One of the reasons is because a lot of them have lived through just social movement after social movement where life became very difficult. And so people want to have something to fall back on. A lot of them are trying to get their wealth out of China. This is one of the reasons why they're buying properties in Canada and in the United States. They put their money into gold, diamonds. I knew a diamond seller who actually, huge market in China. It's because they're trying to get their money into hard assets. They don't trust the Chinese economy. And so I've known a lot of Chinese people like this, expats, people who fled because of human rights abuses, and they still have this trait. They really don't spend their money. They're really tight with it, like crazy tight with it. And it's not because they're like being cheap. It's because there's two elements to it. One, of course, is because of what the CCP did. They want to have that security to fall back on. And I'd say, COVID-19 probably made it worse, because when COVID hit, a lot of people were locked in their houses and they saw the CCP is going right back to where it was. And especially when things look difficult, they're even more likely to lock down, not the opposite. And so the idea of internal spending power, it is not going to happen in China. They've been trying it for so long. Even restricting outside investment, even doing the digital currency and restricting people's ability to even spend money outside of the Chinese economy, even with all of that, it still hasn't worked. The other side, though, is actually a culture thing. And I've been trying to figure this out for years, and I think I got it. The relationship with money is very different with Abrahamic religions, with countries that come from Abrahamic religions versus a lot of other countries. And it's not absolute. You do find in some Buddhist countries, you get people who flaunt their wealth still, without a doubt, but not. It's different. Let me explain. So I don't know the story super well, but I know the kind of essence of it. And so let me explain the story. So in the West, in the Bible, I believe it's in the Old Testament. So, keep in mind, Old Testament would be, Judaism would still have it. So would Christianity and so would Islam, right? They're all Abrahamic religions. There's a story in the West where a father gives money to his 3 sons. And I can't remember the actual saying, go and grow your wealth effectively. So the father gives money to his 3 sons. And one of the sons goes and he buries it. He goes and buries his money, right? And so one son, I can't remember the technicalities. One of them, puts money into like an industry and he builds a business. Another son does the same thing. The third one buries his money. And that son is chastised, criticized, saying that I gave you this wealth so that you could make, so that you could grow it, so that you could make better for yourself, but also better society, if I'm understanding this right. That's what it is. It's in the West, there's this idea that if you've been given wealth, It is a gift from God, and you are meant to use it in ways that benefit those around you. That is the understanding of wealth in the West. The understanding of starting a business in the West is that is your business is your responsibility to society, and that if you can expand a business, you will make society better. You will get more wealthy because you are doing good by using your wealth. And so that is one of the was that the allegory of the prodigal son? That is one of the foundations of the Western thinking behind wealth. You're not supposed to bury it. You're not supposed to sit on it. You're supposed to spend it. But you're supposed to spend it in such a way that your wealth grows. And if you look at what that did for, again, society, culture, a lot of it is based on people's religion. And so I think this has become part of just the cultural foundation of a lot of Western countries. We don't even think about it, but that is kind of what we do with money. We try to use our money in ways that increase our wealth. In traditional Chinese culture, they would literally bury their wealth a lot of times. It wasn't across the board, but they would literally bury their wealth. And the idea was they want to retain it. The idea was to live a frugal life. And, for them, that was being responsible. That you should not do that, right? And so, because of these two very different cultures, you have two very different societies and two very different developments that lead to different civilizations. You could say this has good impacts and bad impacts in the West. In some regards, it has led to us creating very prosperous societies. It has led to us creating, really an incredible civilization. It also leads us to sometimes chase money a bit too much, and also to have some not very responsible businesses. That's kind of across the board. In the East, you have kind of the opposite. People just don't spend as much money. I think that has changed a bit. And traditionally, that was not always the case either, especially some of the big wealthy families. They absolutely just spent money like crazy. One of the Chinese classics, a good book if you want to read it, it's called Dream of Red Mansions, also translated I think as Dream of Red Chamber. And it's about kind of the downfall of a very wealthy family. And it's a very good book with some pretty good moral lessons. They spend money like you wouldn't believe in there. Joseph Melendrez, you're saying, okay, that's in the New Testament. Thank you for clarifying. Again, I don't know this super well. The story I cited is in the New Testament, so this would not, I guess, be part of Judaism, it'd be part of Christianity. And it's the parable of the 3 talents. Thank you for clarifying. The parable of the 3 talents that I mentioned. And so again, this is one of the foundational differences on that, combined with people just being afraid, and when they're afraid they sit on their wealth, why you're not going to have a lot of internal circulation of wealth in China, especially when they're facing what look like dangerous times. They're going to sit on their money. They're not going to spend it. And so I don't think there's any chance the CCP is going to be able to revitalize their economy. Not by a long shot, really. All right, folks, that said, join me tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all for being here. I always enjoy these. Please give us a like. Make sure you leave a comment. It helps us a lot with the algorithms. It really does make a big difference, so please don't forget that. And that said, folks, thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves, and as always, stay informed and stay free. Thank you.